Right, welcome back to the Live, Love, Learn podcast. And I am very excited. I have got a new guest for you today. Now, some of you might know this lovely lady, Jo Gifford. And Jo is an Australian-born quantum healer who's developed a healing modality that combines her skills that she's gained over her 35-year spiritual journey. And today we're really going to be getting to know Jo a bit better, understanding what she's learned over those 35 years and how it can help all of us on our spiritual journey. And in particular, we're going to be discussing the importance of emotional intelligence, the inner child, and how understanding this can really help each and every one of us. So a big welcome, Jo. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. Please tell us, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, it's just lovely. It's lovely connecting. Isn't it a gift that we can connect with different like-minded people across the globe? It's, we talk about, we can get very focused on the downside of technology, but it's got some amazing advantages as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts exactly. I give blessings to Zoom, to the internet. Otherwise, I wouldn't connect with people such as you.
Yeah, lovely. Now, I really want to understand a bit more about you, your spiritual journey, and why you decided to open up your own YouTube. So there's a lot in there. So give us a little bit about your background, Jo, and your spiritual evolution, really.
Okay. So I was raised a Catholic, and when you're raised in a religion, you sometimes just go along with it without ever questioning it. But after I finished college, I actually went back and revisited Catholicism and went to Mass to see if it would answer anything within me. And it actually didn't. So I just let it all go. And as many Australians do, I went to live in Britain when I was 26, 27, and had a fantastic job, well paying, traveled over onto Europe, went out to eat in fantastic restaurants, saw all this music, fantastic life. And one day I was coming home in the tube and I was reading the Standard, and there were rapes and murders reported in London, and there was a oil spill in the Antarctic that was going through the krill. And it just was like, it just hit me that here am I having this lifestyle that's all happy and joyful and carefree. And there were truths in the world that I didn't know how to deal with, how to fit in with, how to settle that into my mind. And it was such a profound wake up that I got off the tube and I looked up at the stars and I thought, where am I going next? This isn't going to work. And so I looked in a couple of different directions, 360, and I said to myself, should I become a farmer? Should I become an astronaut? Should I become a lawyer? Like really diverse directions. Yeah. Where should I go? And nothing answered, nothing pulled. And so I looked back at the stars again and I said to God, I'm done. If you're ready to take me, you can take me tonight. And it was not an hysterical decision. It was not emotional. It was just this knowingness that I'd come to the end of wanting to live this sort of an unconscious life. And the next day I ended up going to a local health food store and I took down the names of a couple of different alternative practitioners. And the only one I ended up going to see was a reflexologist who gave me Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. And it just impacted me greatly. I mean, I remember coming home on the tube, standing up, holding on. You're going to show me that book, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
She is probably responsible for so many different people's spiritual journeys beginning. So I'm standing in the tube reading it as I'm coming home, and I've got a headache, and she talks about what headaches are. And then I went back to that moment in my job where something had happened and it just clicked. Oh my God, that's why I had a headache.
Mm.
And it was gone. It was gone in that instant. And I rarely have had headaches ever since. So that was really the beginning of my spiritual search. I have delved into lots of different things. I went to a spiritual school. I have looked into tapping. I've looked into the Sedona method, lots of different things. I've done a little bit of NLP. But really, what happened over the intervening years before I started my own practice was I came to understand myself and the emotions that were within me. And in fact, when I was 17 and I first went to college, when you move away from the family unit for the first time, you look back and reflect upon it. And I sort of knew in that moment that my mother who had a very tough childhood and had overlaid her perceptions onto me, I understood in a way that it would be inevitable that I would do the same to my children.
Yeah.
And in fact, I decided not to have children at that point because my mother and I had had a very tumultuous relationship. And I did not want to inflict that, I felt, upon another human being. So I've always been interested in what makes me tick. Why do I see the world the way that I do? And over those years, I became what you could call a student of the human condition. Why are we in such a pickle that we find it difficult to change, to heal relationships, all of this sort of thing? So I ended up beginning my own practice in around 2008. I was living in the States for a few years, but I returned to Australia in 2008. And that's when I sort of started tarot reading and Reiki, all of these various modalities. And I organically, quite quickly, moved into what I came to know as inner child healing. And there is a very good understanding of where our viewpoints come from when we look at what we hear and see and feel in those first 7 or so years of our life.
It's so important. I mean, there's so many things sort of unpick there. It's interesting. I won't go into too much the journey, but I really changed course dramatically from my corporate career. I've always been passionate about animals and nature and plants and connection. I've never been one of these people, how a lot of people at the moment are sort of saying they don't feel like they're from this planet. I've always felt almost the opposite. I feel such a deep connection with this planet and with nature, which is interesting. There's no right or wrong, but I'm sort of like, well, a lot of people are not identifying, and I'm sort of, wow, I almost feel like I've got roots in this planet. But I got a gift to go and see have a birthday present. One of my friends years and years ago when I was in my early 20s sort of gave me a gift to go and what she thought was a massage at a healing center. And I thought, I really don't want to massage, and then I saw on the board that there was a lady that did iridology. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I want to go and investigate that. Went and had a reading with her, and she was an Australian nurse, actually, and just about to go back to Australia. It completely changed my life. From then I was like, right, now I know exactly where I want to start this journey. And I then went on to qualify as an animal iridologist and have never stopped since. But I love the fact these synchronicities, how one thing can really change when, in my view, Joe, the universe is giving us signs to our unspoken questions all the time, but it's when do we decide to listen it? When did we pick up that book and read it? Because it's the hints are there, but often we can't hear them. We're not at a stage where we can hear that guidance.
Well, that's, I call myself an inner child healer. But the truth is, a more correct term would be identifying the autopilot, identifying the programming, and disengaging that autopilot, that programming. Because in my experience and in my research and in talking to people, you know, the Jesuits have a phrase, give us the boy till 7 and we will give you the man for life.
Yeah.
And they're acknowledging how vulnerable and impressionable we are. So I believe that around 7, 6, 7, 8, we put on essentially a pair of glasses with filters in them. And we are looking at the world and looking at the people we meet and the situations we encounter through the eyes of that 7-year-old, because we absorb everything around about the world in those first 7 years, and we absorb it as gospel truth.
Yeah.
We don't have a thinking process in those early years. We whatever we see, feel, and hear from those closest around us, we take it on as the truth about the world through absorption, and not really choosing whether we want to analyze it or assess it. It is the truth.
Yeah.
And because it happens at a time in our brain when it's very impressionable, we lose sight of the fact that we're wearing these glasses. So part of the reason people never ask these questions or never hear or follow the intuition is because we are on this autopilot, conditioned to respond like Pavlov's dog to the world. And it's a tough thing to try and talk to people about, because it's saying that there's a lot of sort of self-awareness that has to happen before you can begin, in a way, your real journey. Because up until you ask that question, you're on an autopilot from a perspective that you gained as a little impressionable kid.
I love it. There's so much to unpack here. When I'm looking down, I'm not being rude. It's because I believe in synchronicities so much. You know, there's always a message. So last night, Joe, I went for I've got an amazing friend, Helen King, First Class Therapies. To anyone watching, I'll put her link below, although I will say her website doesn't even begin to explain the range of healing therapies she has at her fingertips. So don't think that that's the excuse for this. So I went for a plasma healing session. Absolutely incredible. I'll talk about that another day. But then this morning, I'm just looking at my phone because I think this is relevant, Joe. This morning, one of my lovely listeners, Vicky Joe, sent me an amazing trailer of a film by David Martin. I don't know if you know David Martin, but he's absolutely phenomenal. And his film that he made 7 years ago called Future Dreaming, I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put the title below, because the link where I found it to watch, I'm not sure if it's his official channel to watch it or not, or someone that's taken it. So, but this all ties in with what you're saying, Joe, on such a global level, is what you were saying about the Jesuits, you know, give us a boy until they're 7 and we will show you the man. This sums up perfectly what we started with. It's like no tool is inherently good or bad. It's how you choose to do it. And you can choose to program that child. And I'm not saying parents choose to, by the way. I think parents do it because they're following repeated patterns. But there are some organizations in my belief system that do choose to program us for not necessarily our own good, for their purposes. But once we realize that, it can be overwhelming and it can be question the whole existence of who we are. But once we've got over that shock, then we can make very different conscious choices. And this future dream in this film, I'll send it to you afterwards, Joe. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. And David Martin is, but it's really explaining how much we've been brainwashed through our programming, and actually asking these completely different questions, not like tweaks of little step improvements, completely what if we completely changed our outlook on the world. It's just beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And I think what you were just saying there about the inner child work it's interesting because for me personally, I'll put my hand up, and the inner child work, I know so many inner child practitioners, and I think therein lies the problem, because so, as you said, you call yourself this, but what you actually do is something different. And it's a very difficult thing for anyone who's in this healing world to actually explain to people that haven't been on that journey as long, what this work involves. I mean, how do you deal with that and try to constantly evolve how you're explaining what you do, Joe? And can you tell us a bit more about what you do offer?
Okay, so this is part of the reason that I started my YouTube channel, to try and get this information out there. And this, often when you are talking to various YouTubers, people are not really interested in emotions. They don't think and don't understand how important it is. And what I try to explain is that we are emitting a frequency. We are emitting a hum. And our energy, which in a way is the emotions we sit in, is influencing the field, is programming the field. So some people talk about this place like a hologram or a simulation. And on one level it is, because we are programming it and influencing how it unfolds by the emotions we sit in day by day. And the world, in a way, is just showing us what it is we are emitting. Now, most of the emotions, from my perspective, are coming from the inner child, because these are issues we've been trying to heal for a long time. And so we, in a way, choose our parents in order to have a certain set of experiences that will give us the next opportunity to heal whatever this unfinished business is. So I show people from a big picture perspective to look down at their life and see the various jigsaw puzzle pieces that are not connected up. So I show the pattern of the thoughts and where the roots are in those first 7 or so years. So the people that come to me are often at a crossroads, or they're stuck. And I mean, I have had doctors, lawyers, counselors, lots of different people come to see me as an alternative therapist, because everything that they've looked at in the traditional medical world hasn't helped them. And so when I show them this big picture and they look down at it, the biggest thing that happens is a lot of them have an epiphany, because most people are not aware that they are really conditioned to respond to the world, not through what they want as an adult, but by what they saw, felt, and heard as a child. So in that little household, for me, the first things that you learn are what is love, what is marriage, what is commitment, what is work ethic, what is success, what is failure, what's the state of the world, is the world scary or is it supportive? And you learn your own self-view. So you learn about love by how your parents love each other, and love by how they love you. You learn about work, and you are actually connecting neurons within the brain. So it's called associative memory. So if I say yellow, some people might say flower or sun. Now, if you say love, you may have watched people argue who were in love. So you have neurons connected to love and conflict. Or if work is hard and overwhelming or humiliating because the boss doesn't like you, you connect work to humiliating or hard. And so we are not only mentally programmed or emotionally. We are physically connecting these beliefs together. And this is the conditioning that we are set up with. And it's why we marry the same type of person over and over. You know, it's crazy. Why do I keep drawing to me a guy that does the same thing that the last 3 guys did? And it's because when you absorb that truth, that love is connected to conflict, it becomes almost a part of the energy you emit. And who do you draw to you is a partner that confirms that energy, that is a mirror for that energy. So in identifying the patterns that you live over and over and taking people to the moments in their early years that you formed this opinion, or one of the early times, you start seeing and putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. And you're doing the same thing over and over in your work, the jobs that you get, with the friendships you have, you're doing the same thing. So it's about pulling out of victimization. It's pulling out of it's not fair and moving into a perspective of the higher picture that says, this is trying to show me what's in my energy signature that isn't healed or isn't resolved. And in one respect, it's never about the other person or the boss or the friend. It's about you and the healing that needs to take place. And when you show somebody this, then they can watch themselves. So this is what happens initially. You watch yourself knee-jerk reacting to these things, and you're astounded that you don't have, a lot of people don't have the ability initially to go, oh, that's it. It's not easy to change like that, because this is so deeply embedded in our energy, in our brain, in our emotions, that we have to start watching and riding the wave of that emotion. And then we begin to shift and change it by feeling it and acknowledging it. And then we are morphing and changing our energy signature so that the world begins to reflect that change in our energy.
It is, I mean, yeah, I agree with absolutely all of that. And I think that's why so many people, I think, now are asking questions and knowing that there's a different way to do things, but not quite knowing where to start, and therefore falling into perhaps patterns of following different leaders. You know, a lot of people have switched mainstream media for YouTube, but actually the work has to start within ourselves. I mean, what is your experience, Joe, in terms of how, when people really start doing that inner work themselves, how that can create a different collective consciousness? I mean, you started your story by saying your realization that you were having this so-called great life where all these atrocities were going on. And I think particularly a lot of empaths sort of can feel overwhelmed sometimes by the scale of awful things that are going on. Even if their life is pretty good, it can be quite overwhelming when you realize about animal abuse, child abuse, you name it, famine.
Yeah.
How do people reconcile that?
So I've cried buckets since finding out some of the truths that I didn't know about. And ultimately, to look at it from a big picture viewpoint from time to time. So yes, this is the truth of the world. In some respects, it's sad, it's horrible, it's not great. But the world, in a way, is a reflection of all of our collective energies, because it is, in a way, an illusion. It is just showing us what's on here. And as we begin to heal ourselves, we begin to emanate healed energy, which then goes out into the collective and then moves into the world at large. So how we are going to help the world from my perspective, is to help ourselves first. It isn't so much. So again, this is big picture stuff. This is looking at this from the place that this is a place of growth and evolution and change. It's not as much about this anymore. Not since we all began to wake up and understand we are no longer unconscious to the truth of this. More and more people are now conscious to the truth about what's been going on. So how do we help this level? How do we help the majority of people who may not be aware yet, or that are stuck in what they're doing, in what they're living out? You take the big picture perspective, pull it all back to you, look at your own healing, and then that is the best thing in a way to help the earth. Now, this is not to say we don't protest or do these things, but there's got to be a balance between the big picture and sending love in a way to all the people that are doing these things, doing these terrible things, because it is a hokey thing, but love is the answer. Because forget about all of our associative memories of love. Love is a higher frequency. When you send a higher frequency into an area that is of a lower frequency, something called entrainment happens.
Absolutely.
And it raises that energy up to the higher frequency. So when you are fighting against a politician or fighting against a situation on this planet, you are just compounding the problem. You are adding to that heavy, dense energy. So as best you can, from time to time, pull out and go, what is this showing me about me? Because I wouldn't be seeing it. It wouldn't be in my face if there wasn't something that I'm supposed to learn about myself from it. Because some people are in the thick of it, like the people in war zones. They're in the thick of conflict. There are people who were welded inside their apartments at some point. Their lesson at the time is incredibly intense, and yet other people, their experience of these events were not as intense. And it's because we are all in a reality that reflects where we are. And we may have different issues. So what I experienced during the sea lockdown was very different to other people. And it wasn't that I didn't have issues. It's just that my issues were different.
Yeah.
I had my challenges and they might look different. But the phrase that I use is, you have to be as interested in your reaction to something as you are to the thing that's happening in itself, because you can learn so much and heal so much inside of you if you process the emotions you are feeling about all of these things happening in this realm.
Yeah, beautifully said. So I just wanted to say that today's episode is sponsored by Asea redox signaling molecules. Now, it comes in two forms, the liquid and the gel, plus there's a huge other product range for us. But why did I start taking Asea, and why is it now an integral part of something that my whole family, both four-legged and two-legged, take every single day? Plus also something that all the clients I work with, again, four-legged and two-legged, it's number one on my priority list. Well, part of what I do, what I'm passionate about, is understanding the challenges that are affecting each and every one of us in today's modern living. The more you know, the more sometimes you wish you didn't know, but the pollution in the air, in the water, in the food, the control of our minds, the propaganda. But one of the things that we can do is take back responsibility for our own health. Now, every single cell of our body, whether we're an animal, whether we're one of the dogs in the backgrounds or one of my plants, contain these redox signaling molecules, and cellular health and cellular communication is absolutely key, whether you want to get your body back in balance, whether you want to reverse the aging process, whether you want to address any particular challenges that you've got physically, emotionally. It all starts with healthy cells. If your liver cells are healthy, your liver's healthy. If your brain cells are healthy, your brain's healthy. But just like a mobile phone, most of us have got mobile phones that we use on a routine basis now, but that mobile phone, regardless of whether you've got the latest model, is completely useless without a signal. So what does this technology do? The gel is something that you can apply topically over particular areas of concern, whether you want your skin to look better, whether you've got a cellulite, whether you've got an area that's causing you a challenge. The liquid is something you drink each and every day to top up what should be in your cells anyway. But when our bodies are stressed, diseased, challenged, or as we age, we make less of them. So personally, I wouldn't be without it. My sleep's better, my energy levels are better, my mood's better, my mobility's better. If you want to find out more, the details are below. But I'm so grateful that this came into my life, and I'm so grateful I can share it with others. I hope you love it as much as I do. Let me know. Couldn't agree more. And, you know, I'm very lucky that I've chosen a life. Oh, my cat's just knocked something off. Where I'm surrounded by nature, and I'm constantly thinking about this issue about it being our perception of things. So, for example, as a human, we might see a rabbit as a beautiful, fluffy little creature that looks so cute where it bobs around. But try being a rabbit for a day. Everything's trying to eat you, and everything's trying to eat your babies. You know, I live around here, and the rabbits around here, they've got badgers, they've got foxes, they've got cats, they've got loads of birds of prey. And you know, you don't really know. I mean, I do a lot of animal communication, but that's still coming through my lens of my reality. So how much is actually their real truth is up for debate. But I don't see rabbits waking up in the morning feeling like a victim. You know, so it's perception of how we view things can be incredibly powerful. Do you think, Jo?
Yeah. And what I would say to you, if you were my client and sitting in front of me and you were telling me general things about your life, what you observed, and you brought up that situation in your garden with the rabbits, I would say that the rabbits and the situation that you are observing them in is showing you something in your energy. So if you were to bottom line what you feel about what's happening to the rabbits, it might be powerlessness, because there's nothing you can do to stop it. Or it could be
I don't feel that at all. Yeah.
But for someone else, they might feel helpless. Like there are people that will be watching the television, and up will come an ad for whales, save the whales. And there's a whale going through the water, and there's a boat chasing it with a big steel harpoon, and you start to feel grief and sadness for the whales, the plight of the whales. Now, in my understanding how reality works is your energy created that ad to come up so that it would trigger you to feel emotions that are encoded on your energy signature that haven't been healed. So that whale and its plight is triggering something within you, maybe your own helplessness, maybe that you had you were a victim of violence as a kid, and you had no way to stop it, and you couldn't escape it. You were at the mercy of this relentless thing that came after you. And what we do as little kids in order to cope and survive is we push aside those emotions we felt in that scenario as a little kid, because it's just too much to process if we are on the receiving end of something like violence as a child. So we disassociate from the emotions, and yet they are still a part of the energy we are emitting. Now, what happens is we grow up and go to school, go to university, get married, get a job. This adult part of us knows a lot about ourselves. We know what we want. We know what we don't want. We have dreams and desires from that adult aspect. But this one, if it's never healed, sort of stays there, still influencing or is a component of the energy we are emitting. So that whale, that ad came up for, in a way, for an opportunity for healing. So these two energies are emitted. And if you were to look at both of those energies in a pie chart, your adult self-aware aspect is quite small compared to the energy being emitted from your inner child, from your unfinished business, because your soul is wanting you to turn and face and embrace the shadow in you, the aspects that you've disowned or have not been able to understand and feel and heal. So it will stay here as an influence in your life. And for many people, it does. This is the content of here is almost what's in the filter of the glasses that you put on as a little kid. So the perceptions that you put on. So when we are drawing to us people and places, situations, experiences, it's coming towards us because mostly of the energy that we are emitting here. So your soul is going, you have to learn that you are powerful. You have to learn that you need to stand in your own sovereignty. Whatever the thing is, so we're talking about the whales, what we're triggered to feel may be helplessness and hopelessness. But as an adult, we have a different perspective. So how do we heal the child? How do we heal what's in here? By turning and facing and feeling everything you feel when you're triggered to feel it, instead of just rushing on, turning off the television, going for a run, or having something to drink, or whatever it is. We sort of take over the job of pushing these away by all of our addictions, whether that's food or drinking or drugs or shopping or gambling or sport, television, sex. We all have different ways to avoid what's in here. But until we really reconnect to where that's anchored in our body, we will still be emitting it. Yeah. So anything that's in your life on one level is just there to show you.
And do you think, Jo, so using the example of the whale, which is a really good one, if someone has that experiences those emotions and then works through them, are they then in a better position to help the whale?
Absolutely. And what happens is these things that we learn, love, marriage, commitment, etc., what makes us lovable. So we learn from our parents what makes us lovable, valuable, and worthwhile. And so for people, for example, that are healers or counselors or nurses, their life is about giving to others. But the reason they give is tied up with what the little child thought they had to do in order to get the love they needed. So a lot of people that are givers, caretakers, live at this end of the giving spectrum. They give, and often when I see them, they're very depleted because they've been doing it all their lives. They really want something different, but don't even know what it is they want, because the wants were pushed aside many, many, many years ago, and the needs of the little child are sort of running their life. So when you assess and look at your little child's needs and what they learned in order to survive as a child, you may go off in a totally different way and do something totally different. So when people that are givers come to me, I tell them they need to spend time at this end of the spectrum for a little while. And when you live at the other end of the spectrum, so you do nothing for anyone for a week or 2 weeks, you have contrast then, and you know where halfway is. When you've lived here and never challenged the fact that you live here, you don't know where halfway is. Because you haven't had the contrast. So it's not that we don't want givers. We want people to give. That's the whole point of the service to others aspect of us. It's not all about me. But when people have lived here, they're giving from a place of being empty and depleted. So their cup is empty. When you come here, learn halfway and begin to fill your cup, you become a much more effective and efficient helper.
I
Because you're
100% agree with that. And the reason I was
yeah,
asking the question is I can think there's so many compassionate people, empathic people that are watching content like you and I produce and lots of other people produce. And it can be so overwhelming sometimes if they think, well, I'm okay, but I know there's lots of other beings of all species that are not okay. And that helplessness. But what I personally found is when you do the work yourself, then some of how you can be of more service becomes a lot clearer, and you
yes.
can use that energy more efficiently to do more good in the world, so to speak. I know that's quite a simplistic way of saying it, but just putting it in perspective for people about why it is, because we all hear it all the time. It's such a cliche, isn't it? Love yourself, do the inner work, hear this, and you're thinking, I interact with a lot of people that run animal rescue groups. I just heart-wrenching the situations they're faced with day after day after day after day. And of course they get depleted, and then in this vicious circle where if they don't get up and do it day after day, the implications on those animals is very severe. And so you can feel caught in a trap. So have you got any tips, Jo, for people that, and that's just the animals is just one example. Obviously, there's loads of other things that people do, whether it's looking after family or children or people in more disadvantaged situations, whatever the situation might be. If someone's feeling that overwhelmed now, and I would suspect there's quite a few of our listeners that might be feeling that, where they sort of, wow, I'm aware of what's going on. What can I do to help? Have you got any tips of where they can start, Jo?
The first thing I would say is to start processing the feelings that you have about that situation. So when I say process, it's some people just get busy and they get out and they start ringing up and they start organizing, doing flyers, all of this stuff. So they jump straight into action. But I would pull back from the action for a little bit and go within and start feeling and breathing everything you feel about that situation. First off, take care of your own inner space, because as we just said, you are a more effective healer. You're a more effective. Now, the energies, if you're sitting in these energies of heavy, dense energy of fear, worry, concern, the higher frequencies of intuition or what do you call it? Inspiration of that thing that you're saying. Where does inspiration come from? Where does that fantastic idea come from to help that will solve a problem or solve an issue? How do you draw to you people that are high in energy that will join with you to help in this situation? You will do it not so much from this level, not so much rolling around in it's so sad, and it is sad. I'm not denying that. But if you can process your own emotions, because in a way you identify with the trauma that that animal is going through, or the trauma that that whale is going through. It's your inner child that is identifying with the grief. or the being chased or the trauma. And it's saying that there's unhealed trauma in you. There's unhealed grief in you. And when you process all of that, you will look at that situation with new eyes and renewed eyes rather than depleted, heavy, dense fear, concern, worry. And ultimately, because there are some things we can't do anything about. There are some issues so huge that there's nothing we can do about it physically. So always process your own emotions, face them, look them in the eye, open to them and embrace them. And on my website, I have a resources page, which is things that people can just access. And one of them is called A Little Love and Tenderness. And it's a process I take every person through that I work with. And it's about, what are you feeling now? What is flowing through your system? Can you allow it to be there? Can you welcome it like a friend? Can you love it? And what you are doing is, in the feeling of it, you are alchemizing and morphing the energy at the core of the emotion, because emotions are energy in motion. So the energy that we are emitting, what our emotions that we are emitting, is affecting the field and bringing these things to us, whether that's a relationship we're in conflict, or whether that's something that's not fair in our local council. It's sort of showing us and what's on our energy signature that we need to morph. And so this actually is the ascension process that we're in. We are here to grow and expand. And again, we have an associative memory with the word ascension. It's like it's, maybe Yeshua ben Joseph or Jesus Christ, who was the Son of God, and he was pure and he was a good person. And so when I say ascension, you say, well, that's not anything that I'm worthy of or able to do. But the truth is, ascension is letting go of all of the dense, heavy energies of anger or greed or whatever these dense energies are, and reaching for joy, reaching for the energy of compassion, reaching for the energy of care. And as we feel and breathe and heal ourselves, and reach for these higher energies and connect with intuition more and more, that's what ascension is. Our body gets lighter and lighter and not stuck on sort of this hamster wheel of the lower energies.
Yeah, absolutely love it. And there's so many tools that people can use out there. So I think that was just such an important discussion today. There's so much more. We didn't even get onto the emotional intelligence. So I'm going to have to invite you back, Jo, to talk about that if you're happy to.
I would love to.
But I don't want to leave today, Jo, without people really understand. So obviously I will be putting all Jo's links below for her website and her YouTube channel. Please do go and subscribe. You know, it really does mean a lot to people when you're trying to get your message out, doesn't it, Jo? That people support that. It's an energy exchange, and we're very, very grateful for it. So in terms of people working with you, what services you've got to offer, can we just finish off by you running through what people can expect from that?
Okay. Well, I do, of course, one-on-one sessions with people where we do a complete sort of analysis and understanding of your life. But I also have workshops. I do 4-week workshops, and we have 10 people in that class. And when we are a certain way, sometimes it's really difficult to see it because it is so familiar, and we are on, as I say, that autopilot. So in that group situation, you get to watch other people go through their life, what's happening with them, and I will work one-on-one. And when you see somebody else it can shine a light on you in a different way and sort of make something clearer, bring clarity to what we are all doing. Because I really believe that most people are run by an emotional 7-year-old,
Yeah.
whether they realize it or not. And that even the most successful people in the world may be doing it to satisfy something in the inner child. So I have lots of processes that I can take you through that will help alchemize and transmute the energies at the core of the emotions. But a lot of what I do is teaching how all this happens. And as I say, there is often an epiphany in people when they go, oh my God, I can see this from this other perspective, and now I know what to do to change. I'm sort of more self-aware. So that's how that works. It's mostly a one-on-one, but I do offer workshops from time to time.
That's absolutely beautiful. And I really agree with you. There can be such an advantage sometimes of working in a group, because again, there's always a synchronicity as to why these souls have been brought together, because you're going to learn a lot from each other. Thank you so much, Jo. That's been, I think it's really, really helpful, because people are looking there and they're looking to sort of thinking, what next? How can I contribute? And this is a really important discussion for us to all have. Look at that different level of self-awareness. So it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you more. I will put all Jo's links below so you can see how to connect with Jo. Please do so, and please let us know what you would like us to talk about next. Let us know in the comments what would be of most use to you. What questions have you got, and we can have an open and honest discussion around that.
That would be fantastic. That would be so good.
Thank you, Jo. Thanks everyone for watching. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. My goal is to inspire as many people as I can to live their best lives, to stay curious, and to raise their consciousness and that of the collective. So to do this, I need to reach as many people as possible, and this needs your help. If you feel drawn, would you be willing to share your favourite episode with 5 different people? This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. If you feel drawn to do that, I will be very, very grateful. All the links and discount codes where applicable for all the products that I support are on my 2 websites, catherineedwards.life and catherineedwardsacademy.com. All of the products are personally tried and tested by me, my family, and my clients. And finally, please do press the follow or subscribe button, depending which platform you're listening on. And above all, stay curious and stay free.